All right, so today we're diving into something that's really got people talking.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Who gets to decide what's true online?
I mean, that's the question, right?
It is, and we're looking at a case in India with some pretty major implications.
Absolutely major, because this isn't just some far-off legal battle. This is something that could directly impact all of us.
It really could, and we've got all the angles covered, court opinions, legal analysis, even a comedian's perspective.
You know what makes this case so fascinating is it's not just happening in courtrooms, it's playing out on our social media feeds right now. It's influencing how we share news, how we consume information. It's really about the future of what we see online.
And it all starts with the comedian, right? Kunal Kamra taking on the Indian government.
Yeah, he's known for his jokes, but now he's known for something even bigger.
Because he found himself at the center of this battle over what the government is calling fake news.
And he just won a major victory.
So tell me more about this case. What exactly is the Indian government trying to do?
Well, imagine this. The government telling platforms like Facebook or Twitter what they can and can't allow on their sites.
That's a scary thought.
It is, and it's essentially what these IT amendment rules enacted in 2023 were trying to do. They were trying to give the government the power to control the narrative online.
Okay, so back it up for me a second. What were they actually trying to do? Like, how would this play out in real life?
Okay, so picture this. The government sets up this fact-check unit. This unit would have the power to scroll through your social media posts, news articles, anything online, really.
Really?
Yes. And they could flag anything they thought was misleading or false, especially if it was about government business.
Okay, so someone in the government is scrolling through my Twitter, deciding what's true. I'm already a little uneasy.
And it gets even more intense because the fact-check unit, they could then order these platforms, Twitter, Facebook, to take down whatever they flagged.
Wow.
And here's the catch. If these companies didn't comply, they risk losing legal protections that shield them from lawsuits over what users post. So it's like a high-stakes game for these platforms.
So to avoid getting sued, they're going to play it safe and just take down anything even remotely questionable, even if it's not actually fake news.
Exactly. They're going to err on the side of caution.
So is that what sparked this whole court case?
That's part of it. See, back in January, this case landed in the Bombay High Court. And one of the judges, Justice G.S. Patel, he was the first to hear it. He actually struck down these amendments, called them unconstitutional.
So he basically said, nope, government, you can't do that. Case closed.
Not so fast, because there's another judge on the case, Justice Gokhale, and she had a different take on it. She thought these rules were justified, especially with all the misinformation out there about the government.
So she was more concerned about the spread of fake news.
Right. She argued it was a necessary step to stop the spread of harmful content.
We've got one judge saying yes, one judge saying no. That's where this gets really interesting, right?
Exactly. The deadlock.
Yeah.
So that's where Justice Chandurkar comes in. He's the tiebreaker.
And his ruling just came down.
Yeah, it just came down.
Siding with Justice Patel, striking down those amendments once and for all. Wow. Okay. So this is where it gets really interesting, right? I mean, his reasoning could have huge implications for online freedom, not just in India, but potentially everywhere. So break it down for me. What were Justice Chandurkar's big concerns about these rules? What made him want to strike them down?
Well, he kept coming back to this idea of a chilling effect.
The chilling effect.
Basically, he agreed with Justice Patel that these rules, even if they have good intentions, right, they could end up leading to way too much censorship online.
Ah, I see what you mean. Because platforms would be so worried about getting sued that they'd just take down anything remotely critical of the government.
Exactly. Imagine being a journalist, or even just someone sharing an opinion online. Under these rules, even if you're sharing something totally accurate and factual, if it makes the government look bad, there's a chance it just gets taken down.
Just to be on the safe side.
Right. Just to avoid any trouble. And that's what Justice Chandurkar was getting at. It's about protecting freedom of speech, our right to say what we think, even if it means criticizing those in power.
Right, and that's a big deal. That's like a cornerstone of democracy, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's enshrined in Article 19 of the Indian Constitution.
Which basically means the government can't just tell us what we can and can't say online, or anywhere else for that matter.
Exactly. And Justice Chandurkar argued that these IT amendment rules, they were a direct threat to that fundamental right.
Okay, but what about the other side of the argument? The government's side, they said they were trying to fight fake news, which, I mean, that's a valid concern, right?
Of course it is. The spread of misinformation is a huge problem. But it's about how you go about fixing it right. And the court was worried about the government's approach. Well, one of the biggest red flags was this definition of government business. Remember?
Right. It was super vague.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was so broad that it basically opened the door for abuse.
Mm-hmm.
The court was like, God. You could argue that almost anything falls under that umbrella. It gave them way too much power.
So it's like, hypothetically, if I retweeted an article that was critical of a government policy,
Right.
they could say that's government business and try to get it taken down, even if the article was completely factual.
Exactly. And that's what the court was trying to prevent.
Yeah.
And then there's Article 14 of the Constitution.
Okay, so how does that fit into all this?
Well, Article 14, it guarantees equality before the law, right?
Right.
So the court was worried that this fact-check unit, without any real oversight or accountability, it could become a tool to silence certain people or certain viewpoints while letting others slide.
So it creates an uneven playing field.
Exactly. And that goes against the whole idea of equality before the law.
It's like they're playing favorites with who gets to be heard online.
And remember, this whole thing isn't just a theoretical debate. Kunal Kamra, the comedian who started this whole legal challenge, he was facing real consequences for his online posts.
Right. Didn't he tweet something celebrating the ruling?
Yeah, he was pretty fired up about it. He called it a victory for comedy and a victory for the Constitution.
It's a good point, though. It makes you wonder, if the government isn't the one deciding what's true online, then who is? Should it be up to these big tech companies to decide?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's one that the court wrestled with, too. You know, they specifically pointed to the Press Information Bureau, the PIB.
Yeah, I've heard of them. They're kind of like a government fact-checking body, right?
That's one way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're supposed to put out accurate information about government policies and actions. And the court seemed to suggest that maybe instead of creating this whole new fact-check unit, it might be better to strengthen the PIB.
So give more power to an existing institution rather than creating a new one from scratch.
Right, because there's already some level of accountability there.
It makes you think, if the government's not stepping in, if we can't necessarily trust big tech companies, what are we supposed to do? How do we figure out what's true online? I mean, it feels like we're all supposed to be detectives now every time we go online.
It's true. We can't just sit back and passively consume information anymore.
So what do we do? Where do we even begin?
It starts with you. It starts with being curious with asking questions.
Okay, so less scrolling, more questioning.
Exactly. And it's simple things. Like, think about who's giving you this information.
Okay, so like, who's the source?
Right. Is it a news organization you recognize? A journalist with a good track record? Or is it some random blog post? Or just someone ranting on social media?
So check the source first. Got it. I'll admit I don't always do that.
It's easy to forget, right? But even just taking a few seconds to think about who's behind the information can make a huge difference. Look for signs of credibility. Like, do they have a history of accurate reporting? Do they have clear editorial standards?
And what about when a story just seems too crazy to be true?
That's when your gut is probably right. If something seems totally out there or too good to be true, it probably is.
So don't believe everything you read.
Exactly. Don't just take it at face value. Do a little digging. See if other reputable sources are reporting the same thing.
So do your own cross-referencing, like getting a second opinion.
Like that. Get a second opinion on the news. And there are even tools out there to help you verify information.
Really? Like what?
Fact-checking websites, reverse image search engines. There's a lot out there.
That's good to know. We'll definitely link to some of those in the show notes. But it still feels overwhelming sometimes, you know? Like it's this constant battle against a tidal wave of misinformation.
And it is a battle.
Yeah.
But it's one we can fight together. And it's not all on us as individuals.
Yeah.
The platforms, these big tech companies, they have a role to play too.
What do you mean?
They need to be more transparent about how they're handling misinformation. They need to give users better tools to report suspicious content.
So we can all be part of the solution.
Exactly. It's about working together to create a healthier online environment.
Because at the end of the day, it's not about censorship.
No.
It's about making sure people have the information they need to make smart choices.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And this case in India, with Kunal Kamra and these IT amendment rules, it just shows us how important this fight really is.
It's bigger than one comedian. It's bigger than one country.
It's about the future of the internet and who gets to control the information we see.
It's a debate that's not going away anytime soon. But at least now we're a little more prepared to have it. Thanks to this deep dive, we know the right questions to ask. We know how to spot misinformation. And we know we're not alone in this.
That's what matters.
So next time you're scrolling through your feeds and something seems a little off, Remember what we talked about? Remember the case of the comedian, the court, and the controversial IT rules? It's a story about free speech. It's a story about the power of information. And most importantly, it's a story about the responsibility we all share in shaping the future of truth online.